we had 185 people in 1 year die of an opioid-related overdose. When we started to implement our strategies and initiatives and monitor and track everything to the day, we're down to less than 50 now. So it shows that there's still work to do because one is one too many.
Hello, Florida. This is Joe Mullins of the Live Workshop Play Show, and welcome to the greatest state and the greatest country in the world. We in Florida, one of the strongest reasons we have one of the greatest states is our public safety. Our public safety doesn't only protect us, they don't only look out for us, they also help us get the help that we need in recovery and addiction, something that's plaguing many states across the country, many counties all over the country. Over the 4,000 counties, one of the number one issues they're dealing with is opioid and drug and alcohol abuse. Today, I've got with me a very special guest. I've got one of the most well-known sheriffs in the world, Sheriff Dennis Lemma. Sheriff, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much, Joe, and thank you for using your voice as a solid ambassador for so many people who are struggling, family members that are looking for some answers. And the greatest responsibility of any civilized society is to protect and preserve human life. And every time we can talk about this topic, I think that we're doing that.
Well, Sheriff, what kind of got me into it? My listeners know, and I'm very fluid and open about it. I've got 14 years in recovery from cocaine and alcohol abuse. I grew up the 2 degrees, a master's. I grew up in a very prominent medical family. It wasn't supposed to happen with me. I defied the purpose of it. I wasn't the person that was troubled as a child. I wasn't on the streets. I wasn't having financial problems. And a lot of sheriffs and a lot of law enforcement said that at first this addiction and this epidemic was because of economy. It was because of the way people were raised. It was only in the bad neighborhoods. I lived in a gated community, and I struggled with alcohol and drug addiction. I didn't live in the projects or wherever people want to say. You were one of the first sheriffs to come out and state that this isn't a disease that's incarcerated into one little area of the community. It is all over our community and is plaguing us. Since you've come out, so much has been learned and seen about this epidemic and addiction. What caused you to do that in the beginning?
Well, thank you for that. And I think that it was incredibly important for me and our team to understand this from a clinical perspective, to understand the cause of dependency and addiction. And it was as a result of that where I started to make the comment that this is not a situation of trying to make bad people good, but rather sick people well. And when you have a condition like this, you know that there is a stereotype surrounding substance use disorder and dependency that many of us were raised under the Nancy Reagan era, where it said, simply say no. And I will tell you, simply say no works incredibly well if you've never started. But if you've started, it is a little bit more difficult than simply saying no. And then if you remember the days of the early development of a pain-centric society, we saw these things brewing right underneath our nose. I mean, we saw the old LSD 1960s and 1970s, and we saw the prevalence of marijuana, but it was 1/10 the strength of the marijuana that's on the streets. And then we saw like the increase of raves and designer drugs, flunitrazepam, rohypnol or roofies, and methylenedioxy, methamphetamine, MDMA or ecstasy. And we kind of watched that closely. And then we had designer drugs that people would stay one step ahead of the DEA and change the recipe to not allow it to fall on the prohibited illegal list. But when all this was going, Big Pharma was brewing one of the biggest crises underneath our nose with folks like Richard Sackler, Purdue Pharmaceutical, when it came to overprescribing. And we found ourselves in a situation where 80% of the people that were addicted to heroin 10 years ago were at one time legally prescribed a synthetic opioid by somebody that they trusted under a legitimate reason. And we found that patients were not properly treated, that the largest hospital group that was responsible for overprescribing was the VA hospital. And we did what we know how to do in public safety, particularly law enforcement and policing, is we closed down the rogue clinics. We took bad doctors to jail, and we almost eliminated the ability to doctor shop, never realizing that somebody who's addicted to a heroin, whether it's synthetic or organically grown, only is turning to street level heroin. And then we had the street level heroin, and then we had the cartels shift their manufacturing to fentanyl. 100 times more potent than morphine, 50 times more potent than heroin, or a microgram is a lethal dose. And I felt like I could use my voice, our team's voice, to be an ambassador and an advocate to change the face of addiction. And when we first started doing it, there wasn't a whole lot of people like you, Joe, that was telling their story. Many people who lost loved ones were not showing up at events and were going to the country clubs and to the various settings that they were in, saying that their loved one died of a heart attack or other types of conditions. And when we started to humanize this, people started to tell their stories. Family members started showing up at events, memorializing their loved ones and making their calling and advocacy to the point where no other family has to experience what they experienced.
Sheriff, I agree totally. And to go back and talk about Joe the addict, not Joe the radio host or Joe the commissioner, the county commissioner, Joe the addict, I remember sitting there one day and saying, this stuff, it hurts. I can't believe I've done it this long. I remember being in tears going, I've got 2 degrees and a master's and I'm going to die by this stuff. I cannot believe I've gotten here. All I'd started out doing was having a little fun at first. Then someone shared it with me in my industry. I was a sports and entertainment agent, said, hey, this stuff will numb pain. And then I associated it with all the pain I had in my life. And I started doing cocaine a little more. And I remember going to a doctor and telling him, this is the worst feeling in the world coming off cocaine. Is there anything I can do about it? I was asking for help that day. That doctor looked at me and he said, get Klonopin. It'll help you come off the cocaine and you can do it easier. At that moment, I trusted the doctor. I trusted him with my heart. I said, this guy, I grew up in a medical family. I never had a doctor mischieve or lie to me or say anything like that. I went ahead and started taking the Klonopin. It did help. It helped coming off the cocaine. Then I remember it becoming such a big problem. I went to the doctor and I said, doctor, I can't sleep. I can't go to bed. And the doctor turned around and said, take Ambien. Ambien will help you sleep. And instead of telling me to get off the cocaine and quit doing the cocaine that was keeping me up, I was drinking a half gallon of vodka a day, doing an 8-ball of cocaine a day. I was taking Ambien, Klonopin. Then I went and remembered going to the same doctor. I went to him and I said, Doc, I got to get off this cocaine. I've been on it almost 10 years now, every day of my life. I need to get off of it. I need help. Is there anything I can do? I crave this stuff more than I crave food, more than I crave anything. And the doctor looked at me and said, we don't really understand addiction. We don't know, but I've heard Vicodin can help you kill the cravings. And I just wanted to kill that craving. So he gives me Vicodin. All of a sudden I'm drinking, taking 18 Klonopin, Ambien, Vicodin a day, an 8-ball a day, and I'm drinking a half gallon of vodka. When I went into treatment, because my family intervened, my mother came in and said, you are hurting me. I had to bury your father. I'm not burying my child. You are not going to hurt me like that. And it got me enough. It raised me enough to be able to go. Before I went in, I spoke to the district attorney. He told me I needed to get help, that a lot of people were dealing with it than I realized in families. I also talked to our sheriff. Our sheriff was clueless on it. He said, Joe, I don't want to arrest you. I've not arrested you, but you need to get some help. Your family's worried. We know what's going on. I wasn't hiding it from people. Everybody knew what was going on. When I got into office, I realized our community, our public service, our public safety had no clue how to deal with it. The words, we're going to incarcerate them by the judges, we're going to keep them out. That was their theme of being able to stop addiction. I didn't care. if you put me in jail. Matter of fact, I would have probably been happier if you'd have put me in jail, because I would have thought I was going to get some time to break that addiction or break that spell it had on me. But then I heard stories about drugs in jail. I didn't hear anybody talking about this until I met you. I was so impressed that day by hearing it. It made me go out in my county and start talking to the judges in the drug courts and the family courts. And the first thing I told them, you guys need to go to AA meetings so you understand who you're talking to. Y'all need to go to Al-Anon and AA meetings so you understand the people that are coming in this courts. You're threatening to take their kids. You're threatening to do all this stuff to them. It isn't going to help them. You need to get them in recovery. Your program was doing that. What made you go into that program, and what made you start doing the helping the prisoner inside the jail?
So it's first understanding that there are a lot of people that kind of fit into that narrative where they were not sleeping over the under overpass, and they had family that loved them. And for every person that was on this journey, there were 4 or 5 people that were crying them to sleep at night, wondering what resources and what help could happen. And understanding this clinically, I knew that there's a middle portion of the brain called the amygdala. And the amygdala is the spontaneous portion of the brain that we have no control over whatsoever. And when somebody's mind works properly, the amygdala is influenced and sends signals to the frontal cortex of the brain. The frontal cortex of the brain is where rational thought and decisions are actually made. And when somebody is addicted to a substance, or they become dope sick, where they really feel like they will die without getting the drugs, it's actually the amygdala that's in control of the brain, not the frontal cortex of the brain. The unfortunate part is society, family members and loved ones actually. We sometimes judge our family member, our loved one, our fellow citizen, or a defendant with the benefit of the frontal cortex of the brain. This is why women who are raised in loving homes, who have a college education, who have all the resources and the means that anyone could ever want, can steal their family heirlooms, lock their children in the closet, sell their body on the streets, and go unconscious in a dirty bathroom with a needle in their arm, not because they're making conscious decisions, because the amygdala is saying, you need this or you will die. And learning that and having a conversation in the early stages of this advocacy with a medical doctor who said, Dennis, I'm going to go out on a limb here and suggest that you've probably never been addicted to an opioid, or nothing as powerful as an opioid. He says, but if you ever want to feel what it feels like to be addicted, have somebody hold you underwater for 45 seconds. Your fight for the surface air is the same fight that somebody feels that they need this stuff to survive. And I've always, I'm rounding out my 33 years in law enforcement here at the Seminole County Sheriff's Office. And I said, if I can take an empathetic approach, if I can show some altruism and help families kind of navigate that path, not only am I likely to save somebody's life, that I am more likely to reduce the demands of society. As a fiscal conservative, I knew that if you're the son or daughter of somebody who's addicted to drugs or incarcerated, you're more than 3 times more likely to engage in maladaptive behavior yourself. So when we lead people to sobriety, when we help families that are in crisis, we lessen the burden of our tax dollars. And when it comes to policing in America, crime is a symptom of another problem. The 3 things that are in constant competition for first place is dependency on drugs, mental health, and an absence of good, solid, effective parenting. We implemented our programs, our initiatives, and really reshaped Florida's law. Every single new drug law that has been brought to the state of Florida over the the past 5 years, originated from Seminole County and the work that we're doing here, led by our legislative delegation. The partnership that we have with Advent Health coming together to lead people down a path of sobriety and understanding the clinical aspect of this is unheard of. And still to this day, I talk to the current DEA administrator, Terry Cole, twice per week on various strategies that can be implemented across the country. And of course, I think it's incredibly important to talk about not only the work that Andre Bailey has been doing over the years with Project Overdose now. The early stages of that. I was honored to serve as a chairman of that effort that brought together the business community, the faith community, and government. But I also serve even currently on the Victoria's Voice Foundation and worked in the early stages with the late David Siegel, who lost his daughter Victoria to a drug-related overdose. And when you look at the story there, much like your story, Joe, you're in a family of influence. You have all the means necessary. I mean, David Siegel and Jackie Siegel are billionaires, building the largest residential home in the country, and yet can lose their daughter. It was David Siegel's advocacy that introduced the world to a drug called naloxone that could reverse the effects or come close to having a magic wand that brought people back to life. Unfortunately, it existed, but nobody knew about it when his daughter tragically passed away. And to be a part of that, to watch him and Jackie lobby in Washington, D.C. for greater access to an opioid antagonist was inspiring. And I felt like as an elected leader and a sheriff, this is something that people are relying on me to champion. And I did that when I served as president of the Major County Sheriffs of America, where I would come together with folks at the White House and Maine Justice and every 3 months. And I'm doing that now as the president of the Florida Sheriff's Association, where sheriffs across the state are embracing and advocating and using their political capital for the families and the strategies that absolutely work.
Sheriff, when I got into office initially, we talked about having the deputies playing a medical role and trying to play psychiatrists or doctors to be able to deal with the opioid and the addiction crisis. And it wasn't fair because these deputies are not trained in that. You mentioned Jackie Siegel and Victoria's Voice. What an amazing story there. Their daughter passes away, but as she's passing away, she knows she's in a dark place. She's struggling. She writes an amazing diary talking about those last few days. Like God enabled her. She knew she was going to be taken, but she wanted her voice to be heard. And David and Jackie have put that, memorialized it by putting it out there, and not hiding it, not being in shame, but getting up and fighting and speaking so people don't have to go through it. A lot of people don't know this happened. At her event, her gala just a month ago, I sat in tears listening to her story about the last days of her daughter. And then the day her husband died, she lost her sister to an opioid overdose. It just doesn't stop, and that family keeps going. That is the difference between someone keeping it quiet and someone ringing out on the hilltops and speaking about it and telling people, hey, there's hope. We can do something. We've got to do something about this. How do those things inspire you as a sheriff?
I think not only as a sheriff, as a human being, when you hear these stories, first to share your personal journey. And I remember in the early stages of the Victoria's Voice Foundation, and again, I've served as a founding board member of that effort. David met with me and he says, "Look, I'm tired of people talking. I want to see action. I want things to get done." And when David was on a path, I mean, there would be nothing that would stand in his way. And Jackie has been such a strong ambassador in the speaking circuits and to influence so many people. I felt like I wanted to fight harder for not only them, but for families that were actually going through this journey. They needed somebody that was inside the circle to be the voice of what actually works. And, at the height of this thing in Seminole County, we're an affluent county. We've got a wonderful quality of life. We're the fourth most densely populated county in the state of Florida per square mile, 300 square miles that you can live on, and about 500,000 people that are living here. And again, we had 185 people in 1 year die of an opioid-related overdose. when we started to implement our strategies and initiatives and monitor and track everything to the day, we're down to less than 50 now. So it shows that there's still work to do because one is one too many. But it shows that when you pull together a strategy that is based on empathy and sobriety, and you cannot exclude the fact that medical-based treatment therapy using the 3 FDA-approved medicines, whether it's opioid-based or non-opioid-based, right? You have different strategies that you can do, and you combine that with cognitive behavioral therapy, changing the way that people think. That's a recipe that leads people towards success. And I think that some of that gets a bad reputation. One of the 3 is methadone. People hear about methadone clinics, and there are ways that you can misuse methadone. But again, done properly, you can balance it out. Then you have other strategies that are combined, and we advocate for this. I've had the privilege of serving as the chair proxy on the statewide opioid abatement council first when Attorney General Ashley Moody was the chair of that, and now James Uthmeyer, our current Attorney General, is the chair. But both of them have delegated the chairmanship of that role to me since its inception. And that's a wonderful responsibility because we make decisions on the nearly $4 billion big pharma settlement. So buprenorphine and these types of drugs combined with cognitive behavioral therapy and the opioid antagonist is really resulting in these numbers coming down significantly. Just in the last year, it's a 43% reduction in deaths. 28% reduction in overdoses in Seminole County alone. And we're seeing these numbers come down across the country.
Sheriff, as we wrap up here, I want to mention Project Overdose, which I was a part of, came into Jacksonville and announced that they have seen some of the greatest reduction in overdose deaths in your county. Your area. Everyone was shocked in there. They were still saying, there's nothing we can do. We're helpless. They were still playing victim with it. And you were doing it. What if I'm driving through your county and I have an overdose, or I've got a drug addiction, or I get stopped on a drug traffic charge? Tell me, what do I go through? What happens to me once I get arrested and picked up by you guys? How are you guys converting these guys?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting, because there's 2 paths on this thing. One, if there is a charge, we make the charge. We promote every aspect of drug court, or problem-solving court, as I like to call it, because problem-solving court is probably one of the most successful criminal justice diversion programs in existence. If you are incarcerated and the reason for your incarceration can be tracked almost exclusively back to your dependency, we get you in programs, whether it's the APOD or OPOD, and we start medical-based treatment therapy on the inside of our facility. We are actually the first local correctional facility in the country to offer all 3 forms of the medical-based treatment therapy combined with cognitive behavioral therapy. And in the early days of this, it was so successful. We had participant inmates petitioning the judges to extend their sentences because of their desire to complete the program. While at the same time, we have brought new legislative efforts that hold drug dealers accountable to the fullest extent of the law. The last I checked, I think we lead the country in prosecutions for first-degree murder for drug dealers. So if it's a drug dealer and they're selling deadly doses of narcotics, we're going to prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law. And we've used our voice and advocacy to bring new laws on the book here in the state of Florida. Many jurisdictions are not even aware of these things. Like, prior to a handful of years ago, you had to have the burden of proximate cause of death in order to make a murder case. We changed that to substantial factor because we know that toxicology reports were finding different concoctions of drugs that somebody was taking, knowing that the amount of fentanyl in their system was lethal. and we cleaned that up. We also protected areas of vulnerability because there was always an increased penalty for a drug dealer selling drugs in proximity to a school, church, or playground, but no increased penalty if a drug dealer was selling drugs in proximity to an area where somebody was trying to get clean, rehab facility, treatment facility. So we brought that through our local delegation. We got that passed into Florida law. And shortly after it, we were the agency that made the first case. We had a place in Altamont Springs, Florida, called Simply Recovery, under the disguise of a drug treatment center. And we found out the executive director of that program was administering fentanyl to the patients that actually would come in. And last and certainly not least, an incredibly important success is the most important thing for us to do when somebody's overdosing is to revive them with an opioid antagonist, whether it's Narcan or Cloxoto, reverse the effects of the drugs. That works well. But what was happening unintentionally is we were saving the drug dealer from prosecution. They were literally getting away with murder in many cases. So we created a new law here in the state of Florida that allows us to charge a drug dealer with second-degree felony culpable negligence for cases where they administer drugs. We can prove it, and we revive somebody with the use of an opioid antagonist. They are now facing criminal prosecution because every other person that is dealt off that hot dose is likely to experience a similar fate. But a lot of programs, I want to give a lot of support and love to Advent Health. They created the programs. It was the first of the kind that they've done anywhere in the 9 states that they operate in. And they have been just such wonderful ambassadors. Andre Bailey and Project Overdose, expanding to 5 different areas across the state of Florida, has done such remarkable work connecting the dots between public and private and faith-based sectors, intersections. And I work with Andre still today, every single week on a lot of these issues. And then, of course, what we do with the Victoria's Voice Foundation, which we have a national footprint and have expanded across the country with the advocacy. But more work to do, and I'll finish where I started. The greatest responsibility of any civilized society is to protect and preserve human life. And I feel like people are counting on us. And I think that society will judge us. History will judge us based on what we do during this crisis right now.
Sheriff, how do people that are listening, we have other counties, other law enforcement agencies listening right now to the show. What would you tell them to be able to get in touch with you or an organization? How would they start these programs in their community?
Yeah, so I encourage anyone who's listening in, who hears this back, that wants to embrace some of these proven strategies. They're proven. It's just not a hypothesis. We have the numbers to back up and support it. Please contact us at the Seminole County Sheriff's Office. Ask for me. I'll put you in contact with our team. Send us a message on social media. Reach out any way you possibly can. But promise me one thing when you do it. You'll come, you'll look, you'll listen. If you see something you'll like, you'll take it and give us 0 credit for it. It is important that when you take it back to your home jurisdiction, that you have complete and full ownership in the initiative. So anything that we've done, any policies that we've had, any relationships that we've created, you are absolutely welcome to, because this is bigger than any one organization or agency, and it is absolutely proven to save lives.
Sheriff, I love your approach to it, and I heard it many years ago in treatment. There's no one solution to this epidemic. There's many different ways, many different avenues. Keep your mind open, ask questions, but more importantly than anything, don't hide this disease. That's what it loves. It lives in the darkness. When you bring light to it, it destroys addiction. That is one proven method. Communicate, talk, and ask for help. I want to thank you for joining us. And I want to just say again, being on the side of recovery and living in it, thank you for people like you. Thank you for the sheriff that I had 14 years ago, and the DA, the district attorney, who ended up being the U.S. attorney, Bobby Christine. Thank you guys for reaching out and speaking and talking to me like I was another struggling human being, not a piece of, a trash or a bad person, helping me get to that. And there are many other people out there that will owe the same gratitude and same thankfulness. And listeners, listen, these aren't bad people. They're people that are screaming for help. Listen to them. And thank you, Sheriff Lemma, for the work and the dedication you and your department has had for the state of Florida, the county of Seminole, and really the country.
Thank you so much, Joe. I appreciate you.
Guys, I want to remind you and welcome you, Sheriff, welcome. Thank you for coming on. And listeners, I want to remind you, go out, ask for help. There is a solution to addiction. Sheriffs like Sheriff Lemma, programs like the Seminole County Sheriff's Department has intact are great programs to follow, and it gives people second chances in life. It gives families a chance to maintain and hold on to each other. It is a solution to addiction. The first step you've got to do is step towards your higher power, your God, Jesus. That's who I did. And that was the biggest change in my life. And then started listening to people that had solutions and had help for us. Thank you, Sheriff, for what you do. Remember, live, work, shop, play Florida. And people in agencies like the Seminole County Sheriff's Department and Sheriff Lemma are what make our state the greatest state in the greatest country in the world. Have a great weekend.